I mean, you knew coming in this was going to be, obviously a tough game, two top 15 teams, but I mean, very physical, a lot of defense, I mean, very low scoring game. Just what can you say about your team's ability to, it was one of those days where, it didn't matter how you got it done, you just need to get it done. And it seemed like you guys outdid them in almost everything.
Well, I mean, I think the beginning, wasn't real pretty at the beginning, right? I think both teams were pretty tight. We're both played pretty hard defensively, and I think everybody was just tight. And, turnovers, I mean, how many jump balls, right? Bailey was saying we probably set a record for those. But then, when it kind of started to loosen up, especially that second half. But I think, again, it was our defense. They really, I think I told you guys, they really locked in on the scouts. We had a little time when we were reforming where I think we were a little loose with the scouts and knowing when and who. But we've really, really done a good job with that. We have the whole year. But I thought Kylie Feuerbach, again, with her defense leading the way, Chat, on 12. I just felt like that tone really set us at the beginning. And then it withstood their hard defense because that press, they do a great job. And, we didn't handle it well real early. But, a lot of teams don't because it can kind of surprise you with the run and jump. Sometimes it's a slow down, but they're pretty long. When they put one on the ball, 33 up there. So when we settled and then got that high-low going, I think that's when things really, really started to be a little better for us in the third.
Yeah.
Jen, I got to say, in all my years covering you guys and watching this program, I can't think of a more hustle-riddled performance. I mean, it just seems like every single play, it wasn't one player. It was an entire team locked in, energy, hustle-wise. I mean, did you notice that early on in the game? Did you notice in the scouting report? And what can you say just about, it just seemed like they were totally in sync the entire game.
Yeah, we just talked about, I felt like, I really enjoy how Michigan plays. I, really have a lot of respect for Kim and her staff. They're fun, they score, they work really hard. They're always kind of kamikaze, right? And I feel like when we're rolling, I talk a lot, I just want to be a blue-collar, blue blood. So we have plays that we reward about blue-collar plays. And when we're really going and we're really locked in, boy, they're all diving. You got your bigs laying out, you got chit-chat going after those jump balls. So I just think, today, when you have senior days, there's so much emotion. And sometimes that emotion can stymie. It can kind of get you on your heels a little too much and you lose the focus. But we talked a lot about doing it for those seniors and sending them out on their celebration, even though we got a huge game on Thursday. I think they bought in. They were locked in today. And, both two gritty teams that we were both going at it, and we were going to take the win any way you could get it. And when everybody was diving and tying everybody up and banging a little bit, I just think it was two really, really, hard-working teams. And I just I loved our blue-collar mentality today.
Chad. I believe 8 players make the all-defense team this year. Kylie Feuerbach's not going to have the stats that people look for, but
Yeah.
why?
I
Make your case for her.
Yeah, I just feel like that's the one thing I think happened with Kylie last year. And Coach Abby Stamp, she was really disappointed about that because it's usually a few blocks or you rebound. And I think sometimes there's so much going on for the people who vote, and you can go fast on that one. And it's like, well, I don't really know. You just don't remember it. Oh, yeah, she has rebounds. Oh, she has blocks. So they're good at defense. But we put Kylie on the very best player every game in and every game out. And she works tirelessly to disrupt. And, there's a few games, they might still get their points or whatever, but she sets a tone for us. And she usually limits the other team. So I'm hopeful that the coaches, at least, when they look at it, will kind of remember who kind of made it a little harder for their best player. And look, I'm not one of those coaches that are like, oh, she's the best and my kid's the best. Hey, I live in a league that there's so much elite. And so I know there's really good players, the Michigan's team, Ohio State's team, Illinois' team. So I got to look at all those stats. But when I just look at it from my lens, how she has helped lead us and, kept us in in the upper part of the conference, she just disrupts. And I wish there was a category for disrupt. because I do think she should be on the team. Maybe she won't get defender. In my mind, I'm biased, but I certainly hope she gets on the team.
You know, was some of that stuff with Ava kind of out of character? I imagine you liked some of that a lot. You know, the talk.
Yeah.
You know, the getting separated. You know,
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, kind of a badass today.
Yeah, exactly. Well, number one, Ava wasn't feeling great yesterday at practice. You know, everybody's got something going around. And today she looked a little peaked when we had breakfast. And I thought she kind of started a little, you know, kind of flat. And, you know, so we went through the first quarter and everybody's going to try to double her and, you know, do something if you're with one of your leading scorers. So I just had a chat with her in the second, you know, quarter time. I just said, hey, look, you know, no one really knows you're not feeling your best. But you know, you either, you know, if you're really, really sick, I get it, but we got to go some different directions because you're going to get hammered and if you don't have the energy. And, you know, I'm with you, but we got to kind of go. And I said, it's hard, but if you know, we'll get you some rest, but you got to attack. And then I think at halftime or something, she must have got some bananas or something. But I think, you know, that was a big growth step for her because, you know, kind of whatever that, you know, badass, kick-ass mentality, you kind of have to have that. And when she really answered in that fourth quarter, you know, she just kind of was, that high-low game got going. And to me, when she kind of tripped it, that's when it started to change. So I thought a lot of growth for her today. And that adrenaline got her rolling. And I was proud of her because the first time you're sick and trying to manage it, it is kind of weird as an athlete.
The senior class is the last of the Caitlin Clark era. Can you just say what that means, you know, what they meant to not only Iowa basketball, but to women's basketball as a whole?
Yeah. Well, I just think, you know, my thing with, you know, anytime there's a transition like we had, and anytime it's just such a transient world in sports now, you know, it's unfortunate, but you can go to the portal, you can play right away, and all the things, and there's just a lot of people always in these kids' ears. It was just really cool for this group. They loved it here so much, and they, you know, wanted to continue being a part of it. And I think it's a great example for kids everywhere and families everywhere that, you know, when you got something pretty special, you know, be careful in trading it in just for, you know, whether it's minutes or, you know, proximity or what have you, or money. These guys, it wasn't quite as big a deal a couple of years ago. But I think the fact that they were role players in the early year, and then, you know, I just said, hey, let's make your era special. You know, what can we do? I think we got some possibilities here, and that really excited them. And, you know, come what may the rest of the year, I think this group has put their own mark on it. Yes, the Final Fours are awesome, and that's what we're shooting for, right? But I think the way they're playing and, you know, ushering in these young kids, you know, we're younger than we're older. We're talking about Ava Hayden a lot, right? You know, Chit Chat's running the offense, playing great defense too. On Swords today, I mean, she made it tough on her. And at Hannah's hand, I was so happy she got a double-double. But I just think they knew the standard. They helped us continue to push the standard. Great young women. I love them.
You talked about Ava's badass, as you said. Has that been building over the year, do you think, as she gets more time?
Yeah, well, I think you kind of have to grow into it. Like, you have to become good. And then you start to take the punches of frustration. And then you either take it and, you know, like, oh, I got fouled, kind of give it on back. And I think she's finding that fine line, right? Of, you know, the competitive spirit of the great ones. You can do it with class and you can do it with confidence. It doesn't have to be arrogant or cheap, but you have to own your space. And I think Ava's doing a beautiful job of owning her space. You know, she's still really young in this game, right? But I think she's taken these steps in different ways. And, you know, speaking of, okay, we all love Megan Gustafson, greatest competitor, sweetest, right? There was one time in a game when we needed it at a huddle, and Megan was kind of a leader, kind of just by, and one. And we were like, had to manage the clock. And Lisa wrapped up, and all of a sudden Megan goes, we are gonna stab and twist. And everybody was like, what? Megan so violently just said we're stabbing and twisting, right? And I think there's something that clicks over sometimes, and I'm seeing a little bit of that in Ava, a little bit of that stab and twist.
Sorry. You talk about reforming defensively,
Mm-hmm.
and it was only 2.5 weeks ago that you guys gave up 91 to Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
How much was confidence restoration a big part of that, knowing how well you guys had played defensively before?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things at that time, and it wasn't an excuse. The injuries happen; they are the hazards of our jobs, and you just have to, reform. It was just all a lot of timing. I mean, most everybody can play stellar defense against a UCLA on the road, and it may not be enough, right? So that was that. We come back, and those trips are tiring. And no excuse, but I think when they got to do it all the time, I think that's a challenge. And Minnesota is really good. And so you come off of that trip, you're reeling, you're still trying to reform, and you're underconfident, and you're playing against a team that's really confident and, really, really can score. So I think part of it is Minnesota is really good. They were really good that night. We just were getting back and continuing to reform, and I just think that it looked a little tired. In fact, after that, I have cut practices. I think I worked them too hard. I think that trip worked it too hard in between the USC and UCLA game. We came back, and I worked it too hard to practice was too long. It was too many trips up and down. So I've cut back. I'm trying to save those legs, and I think it's been a little bit of learning as you go. But I think a lot of it has just been that they've really been studying those scouting reports, and we're finding ways.
Coach, biggest win of the season as you're heading into March, and it's a 4-game win streak. Talk about reforming. Are you starting to see those results coming together at the right time?
Yeah, I think so. I think what's so interesting about a league like this, I was excited, and then by the time I got to the locker room, I was like, man, Illinois is so good, right? And they are. Illinois, Shauna does a great job. Her actions are really, really good. Those guards can get downhill. They can shoot it. They're really big. So it's you win a big one, right? And it's the biggest one. I personally now think the next biggest game of the year will be Thursday night, because I have so much respect for what they do and how they do it. So ranked wise and needing it to keep the momentum, definitely. But I just think, everybody's playing for something now. So we're playing to kind of stay and get higher, right? And, get a better seed, and everybody wants to double bye. I haven't even looked at where Illinois is, but everybody's playing to get a better seed. Everybody's playing for that net, right? That quad 1 win. And so our target, it was little in the beginning of the season, and we got bigger, then it got little, and then we got bigger, and then and now it's getting bigger again. And so we have to learn how to manage that, and we have to learn how to continually lean into that. And we need, Ava to start the game and end the game with a little bit of that. So I'm really proud of what we've done, especially mostly we're pretty young. So, Jeff, I think you asked me when do we overachieve one time, and I didn't know then, but I think, where we were, I didn't have time to think about it. I do think this group has just kept growing and, exceeding the things I think a lot of people thought of. So I'm proud of that.
Jeff.
Yeah, Coach, I remember some of your opening pressers last year. You talked a lot about transitional season, some growing pains. I think flash forward a year, you still see some of that, but you just celebrated a big win, top 10 team. A lot more wins this season. Can you talk me through how that feels for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think year 2 is a lot different than year 1. I don't really look back. I just knew that was transitioning. I just think that, the goal every year is just to keep getting better and growing. So I don't really have, I guess, a comparison to last year. I think we just want to, I just want to be great. You're just tracing greatness, and we want to go back to Final Fours. You want to win Big Ten championships. So I think what I like about this team is, last year it was all kind of new to everybody, but now it was just new to the new kids, right? The chit chat to the freshmen. but everybody else, you know, they kind of got a year under their belt. So I think it's been a nice continuity to this year.
Coach, sorry.
Yeah.
Ava kind of talked about these blue collar plays, and they said they had a tally board going.
Mhm.
You guys won a lot of 50-50 balls, bodies on the ground. You really stopped them from getting second, third, fourth chance opportunities. What equals a tally? How do they earn a tally?
Well, you know, it's kind of subjective, but usually it's kind of whatever that kind of badass kick-ass, right? But it's like you're diving, you're tying it up, you are on the floor, you are like relentlessly pursuing a rebound. I mean, you are moving, and you may not get the rebound, but if you're like trying to crash and you spin off and you're able to tap it to somebody, it's just the mindset. So we kind of, you know, we show them like those kind of, you know, examples. But, you know, hustle plays. But, you know, I really think there's so many blue blood programs. I just want to kind of be that blue blood, blue collar blue blood, right? And that's what we talked a lot about, is like just keep establishing who we are. You know, we aren't going to shoot the ball well some nights, right? And sometimes, you know, the defense, they're great. You could switch off, and I've seen Swords and Olivia Olson, we recruited the heck out of Olson. They just are unconscious. The hand's here and they finish, right? But if you're still diving and you are, you know, if you're trying to lay out and you're boxing, that's going to help you the next time. So that's kind of our definition, and they've really bought into that, and they want to be that. They want to be a blue collar team. You know, we're working to keep that consistency of those blue bloods. So, and I think it's fun, you know, and you know, usually the ones that if you win those hustle plays, you usually have a pretty good shot at winning the game.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.